I think it's wacky sometimes how some drugs are like a little fable or like a riddle or something. Like you take some MDMA, it's like feel as good as you possibly can and then like experience all the pains in your life slowly return over like the next week, like all of the sorrows that you've been holding on that you got to let go of for a moment, they're gonna like drift back into your reality, like I understand there's like neuroscience behind this, but like
Yeah, it's
to do
Sticky
with serotonin
Tuesdays.
and whatever. Yeah, exactly. um but I just like because of that, I love thinking of shit like Trump at his birthday parade that no one showed up to, with like the tanks like slowly squeaking by to like silent crowds. Just like I know he's a teetotaler. I just checked with our American staff before the show. But like um but like imagine if Trump did a ton of Molly and then showed up to the military parade. And then
I
like
feel,
the week
yeah.
afterwards, he was just like having to process that really like no one showed up. Like
Mm, I mean, I feel like we know he doesn't drink.
hmm.
I feel like that man definitely knows what cocaine smells like.
Yeah,
Like,
without a
Yeah.
shadow of a doubt. He's
yeah,
doing
yeah,
adrenochrome all the time.
yeah,
He's
yeah,
got
yeah, yeah, yeah.
kids
He's
of the
mixing them
week
up. Yeah,
in a
yeah,
room somewhere. That's probably the compromat that Mossad has got on him, actually.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like there's like a lot of those old videos of him partying where he's like, like the one where he's like talking about Epstein, like all that kind of stuff.
That's a
It's
point actually. If he was involved with Epstein entirely sober, that's just like such a like
oh yeah, yeah.
an extra
Damning.
grim reality. Holy
Yeah,
shit.
yeah. That really
Horrible.
is like pretty gnarly to think.
Anyway,
Um
it's Red
yeah.
Planet. Let's start the show off with the way we usually do with a question. Tim, what was the most base thing you did this week?
This well, so it has been a couple weeks actually since I was on because I had to miss one and blah blah blah. Um but yeah, so probably the most space recently would be there's like the Palestine protests that are still happening, but just with the recent kind of like escalations and stuff like that, they've stepped up a little bit. And there's also been yeah, there have also been. Didn't actually attend it because I didn't hear about it, and I was at work anyway. But there was like some kind of Iran solidarity march sort of thing, which I think was the same kind of format that they just went down to where the Israeli embassy office is. Um, but I think I'm not sure about I'm not like I think they've started to Israel has started to close up all of their embassies around the world now though, and I think they're recalling a lot of their diplomats. The Wellington one got
God
closed up
damn.
in New Zealand. I'm not too sure about the Auckland one. But I did see a lot of people online talking about how that had happened in their area as well. So yeah, I mean, a lot of people like that was one of the original kind of requests from like a lot of groups protesting for in support of Palestine over here is that the embassy should be closed and the diplomat sent out sent back in immediately. So yeah, so it kind of looks like that's happened anyway. But I mean, obviously because they're more in like an active war now as opposed to just being like as opposed to listening to the demands of protesters or whatever. But yeah, so I'm not sure what that will mean about protests in the future if the embassies are closed. Anyway, Soph, what did you get up to? What's the most space thing you've done recently?
Yeah, it was a pretty chill week for me. I had some cool stuff going on last week. Things are a little bit stalled for like reasons I hope to not have to get into. Um, I have been chilling. I mean, I finished a big work project last week and or the week before that, my video about the Mars trilogy, and there was one more shot I needed to get for it with my telescope, which was a picture of Saturn. Because I didn't get a picture of Saturn earlier this year when it was visible. So I like waited all this time and I've got it and I'm gonna add it in to the version that's already up on Patreon and then put it out with a bunch more commentary. Um, and it was a bit of a mission. Like I guess this is just the most eventful thing in my week. It's not that based because it is just work, but like um my girlfriend and I got up at like we ended up all-nightering it and then going out at like 2:30 a.m. through to like 3:30 a.m. to get pictures of Saturn. And then like you couldn't see the rings in any of them, but when I stacked them together, the rings became visible, which was quite magical.
Oh
Um,
yeah, cool.
that was really fun. And also the moon was really low, so it was like this kind of lemony pale yellow, which was lovely.
Yeah.
But like I say, it's not actually that based. It was just very fun for me. Fun is based, I guess. Anyway, Mule, what was the most based thing you did this week?
Well, I've pretty much resigned to having a break from activism over the summer, and I'm not really feeling too ashamed about that because it has been far too long that on Red Planet I've just felt like I'm boasting and this segment, and I don't like that anyway.
You're giving us time
Um,
to catch up.
I'm giving you all time to catch up. No, come on. Essentially, the idea behind it is that there's been a very stressful period that I've been through, and a lot of activism can cause you to burn out, and I was definitely experiencing burnout. I think I've spoken about it briefly in a past show. But actually, the most base thing that I did this week was to sort of try and prioritize my own health and my own healthcare, and this wasn't last week, was it? It was this week that I spoke to you about my new health diagnosis.
Yep.
Yeah, so basically, I found out that I've got a fatty liver, and essentially, even though it's got like a bit of a silly sounding name, it's not too serious. Apparently, from what I've read, it's going to be a combination of, I think, maybe alcohol that I've drunk and also supplements. There's been some stuff that's come out in terms of like supplements. That you could take to help you do bodybuilding, which of course I was doing quite a lot of. I was taking creatine every day and also vitamin D supplements and collagen supplements and God, what else was I on? Vitamin B some days. Basically, even though it's all healthy stuff that you should be having like a combination of all of it can just overwhelm your liver and give you like, basically like low liver function. And I think it's probably something to do with that. I'm speaking to the doctor again on Wednesday, but it actually explains a lot of my fatigue as well, which is, I think, again, something that I've been figuring out is like a big combination of different things. It's a combination of like burnout. I got some stuff going on with my eustachian tubes, and I won't go too much into that because it's a little bit gross, but eustachian tubes is where all like mucus in your face is basically made and stuff. But I've figured out, been looking into that as well, and I've been like figuring out some like it's kind of quacky stuff and but it has been helping, just like massaging various different parts of the ear and stuff that are like related to acupuncture, and it has genuinely relieved like some headaches that I've had, and also been using some different medications and stuff that I got from the pharmacy that seems to be helping. So essentially the most base thing I did this week is prioritize my health, which has been something that I haven't prioritized in a long time, and oh boy, yeah. It also is like coincided with I'm trying to clean the house and stuff because there's very high likelihood that I'm allergic to dust or possibly some amount of hair from the cat. Um, so I'm trying to figure that out. So I'm going to try and get like an allergy test as well soon. But yeah, never forget, folks. Always look after you first. A healthy comrade is, always. Well, I don't want to say the most useful comrade because people can be useful in lots of different ways. But it's always better to look after your health if it's something that is something that can be sorted out by a visit to the doctor, kind of thing. Yeah, and that is the end of the most based segment. We are a show that is very interested in knowing what based things that you've been doing. You can always message us on Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok, or send an email to based@redplanetshow.com. Include your name and pronouns if you're cool with that, and we may shout it out in a later episode. Please don't hesitate to get in touch with us. And Soph, you're going to start us off with the news. So much news. What news are we going to start with?
I titled this one "The Emperor's New Drones." It's all about Trump's embarrassing big boy birthday parade. No King's Day events held across America and the whole world to coincide with Donald Trump's embarrassing military parade. Saturday this week, yesterday as we're recording, President Donald Trump held a military parade to celebrate his 79th birthday. It was one of the most embarrassingly unattended events held by perhaps any sitting world leader in history, like proportional to, the population and the general uh, how much people usually show up to American like state events. It was dead. It was so dead. Like people were sharing pictures and videos, and I was like, that's like a picnic. Like that's like a fundraiser for a local school, surely. Like that was really bad numbers. There weren't even so like that many troops. Like you'd think for a military parade, you'd have like rows and rows and rows of marching troops, and they just like weren't. Like they wheeled a lot of
I
tanks
saw, yeah,
around.
the marching was kind of like it wasn't really marching either. It was like
Mhm.
they were
They were
just kind of walking.
slumping.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
this
yeah.
is the thing because it coincides with like just terror, like horribly low morale in the troops because they've been deployed against the citizenry and like yeah, I mean, what is it that thing that troops sometimes do when they have really low morale, when there's like super low morale in all the troops and they're being turned on the citizen? What is it that thing
Never
the
heard of
guys with
it.
the guns do
Mm.
sometimes when no, whatever, I can't remember right now, but
Who knows?
multiple Trump officials were seen yawning, just dissociating even more than Elon Musk.
Except
Or
for MAGA Queen Marjorie Taylor Greene, who was using so many guns.
holy shit.
Like, I don't know if you saw this, but she was like, there was like a big heavy machine gun, and she was like, I gotta get on that. I gotta have a go at that. And I don't know if she was
Okay, that would
firing
be
it.
me. That would be me though. I
Yeah.
Yeah,
would I
for
would want
real.
to get like something like deep fried on a stick from the stall over there and come over here and just like use
She's
up
just
the
like me
entire
for real.
belt fed chain. Like,
I think we
yeah.
could probably turn Marjorie Taylor Greene because she was so mad at the big beautiful bill. She was like, AI sounds really cringe and bad, and we shouldn't do that. And Donald Trump should have thought about states'
All
rights.
right,
Anyway,
we
sorry.
can change Marjorie Taylor Greene. That's our cis white man opinion of the show. Uh, um. Anyway, yeah, it was just a bizarre spectacle. Like there was there was at one point this just really did me in like a troop carrying a little quadcopter like by hand.
That
It's
was a
like have
highlight.
it fly
Oh
around. What do
yeah.
you do? It flies. Incredible. But the real news story here is of course that no King's Day events were held in just
Mm.
as far as I understand, like this Conrad showed us a map that was so densely packed, I have to assume it's like most major urban centers across the whole
Yes,
entire continental United States and more because it also
thousands of events.
Conrad's saying thousands of events and beyond the US as well because there was a No King's Day in Berlin where Americans showed up, like Americans who live in Berlin showed up. They recited the Declaration of Independence together, which I like okay, the original Declaration of Independence was like full of a bunch of like conspiracy brain nightmare bullshit that like was not in any wasn't like wholly not true. It was just like how scary the king is and how all his awful plans he actually wasn't planning. Um
Yeah. It's just
so
like
like
a
it is
description of like Count Dracula.
but it's just like no kings like of course get rid of king like but it's also like just a document written by a bunch of white guys who own slaves. I'm just like you can do better than this
Yeah, yeah.
but you could also do worse because in the UK we were not allowed to have a no king's day because we have a
Mm.
king, so we had a no tyrants day
Oh,
because people
Well,
would be in trouble if they tried to protest the king.
well, did
no
you hear,
bad bosses
Soph?
there.
Did you hear, Soph, that the actual organization that is trying to end the monarchy turned
Mm,
up anyway, Republic,
nice.
to that protest and were actively being like, no, we should have a No King's Day, and
That's
this is the
fantastic.
right
Okay.
thing to do. Yeah.
I mean, that's a relief and that's progress in a positive direction, at least. I think
Yeah.
what really got me about the reciting the Declaration of Independence in Berlin was just like, we reported on this a few weeks ago, but like in the Philippines, they made a two-headed effigy and it had the head of the president of the Philippines, Bongbong Marcos, and of Trump. And then the protests, like the people just beat it with hammers and just like beat it to shit. And like come on, guys. Like when you compare that with like reciting the Declaration of Independence.
I know, it's
Um,
like it's absolutely wild. Like I think like even like you get like these conservative protests, like the January 6th insurrection and stuff like that, and then it's like you just get, yeah, I don't know, just comparing both sides seems kind of like, man, you guys could go so much harder, like channel some of
well,
that freedom juice, like.
at least the freedom juice was flowing in America itself. I don't know, I cannot remember it perfectly right, but there was a sign in the Philly protest where someone had like fuck ICE, no kings, go birds, which was great.
I saw
Yeah,
that
yeah,
sign.
But there were
Hell
huge
yeah.
numbers. There were huge numbers. There were over 100,000 people in Philadelphia. LA saw many thousands across the nation. It's millions upon millions of people
yeah,
showed up in different locations altogether. And even in deep red, like even cities in deep red states saw huge crowds because you have to remember it's become even a bit of a popular meme recently to just point out like on like the left social media, like the people in red states are not our enemy. They like there are a whole bunch of people there who are literally equally as horrified as us by
yeah.
everything, and like they're stuck in places where gerrymandering makes their votes worthless.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. Like, yeah, I mean, I think we've talked about that before, like in the past, like this idea that everyone's just like, we should just bomb the red states and get them done. And it's like, well, no, it's like they are like there's so many people
yeah,
there that are the victims of, it's like class war, it's like, and especially when you look at like a lot of the political dynasties in the South and their history and links to, like slave plantations and everything like that. And it's like, like a lot of these dynasties have just morphed from, yeah, like plantation owners to governors to all this kind of stuff. Like it's a class war issue that goes back,
precisely.
like hundreds of years. So.
Precisely. So, although the flavor of No King's Day protests was peaceful and the coordination fairly establishment liberal by the looks of things, the massive attendance of these events shows the general consensus that things in America need to change urgently. I think the fact that you can have so many people who are showing up on the premise Trump is trying to declare himself king and he's trying to act like a king, and we want him gone. That's that's a good it's a good start, even if it's not like even if A to B marches aren't going to change anything simply on their own. But Tim, what else has been happening this week?
Yeah, so obviously everyone's probably very aware that Israel have attacked Iran. Yeah, so I mean, Israel have attacked Iran many times, even if they haven't always taken credit for it. But yeah, so they assassinated a bunch of Iranian military leaders and nuclear scientists this week. Um, yeah, so they bombed Tehran and Natanz, which is a uranium enrichment site, and a couple other cities. And there were at least 80 killed in Iran, including civilians, on that first day. One thing that's interesting is they keep talking about the nuclear scientists as well. They keep saying, we took them out, but the scientists that they killed were civilian scientists. Most of them just worked at universities and stuff, and it's just that they had nuclear skill sets, so they weren't military personnel or anything. This is just like, some guy that worked at
Yeah,
at a university that knows about uranium and shit like
yeah,
that,
yeah,
which is
yeah.
like
This is
insane.
when we had Michael Lawfer from Four Thieves Vinegar Collective on. Like we talked a bit about like informational control that the state does. Like there's like there are nuclear equations where you can do like everything up until a certain point, but like if you solve that equation, like the FBI is going to kick your door in. Like,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
this is like a worldwide consensus of like limiting knowledge in this way. Like these
yeah.
are like classified information, even though it's technically just like facts of the universe, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's like, yeah, like you've found the hidden knowledge of the like of the dark magic, and now you gotta go. So yeah, which is, yeah, the whole thing is I mean, it's totally fucked. But Israel, which is a nuclear state that, like isn't, like that intentionally didn't sign any kind of, like agreements about nukes or anything like that, bombed Iran's nuclear sites. So while, like while we get like the US and NATO and stuff talking about like, you know, like there's this whole thing for years where they've been saying Iran is like 3 months away from building a nuke, and that's what they've been saying in the news now. But they've literally been saying that since 1979, and it
Yeah.
gets
Like
from
either something just like Looney Tunes keeps happening in like the Acme Science Labs in Iran, or someone is like holding them 3 months away, or you're making the whole thing up. Like it's not,
exactly,
yeah.
yeah. So from the point where it's like they have the equipment and they, you know, all this kind of stuff like that. If they wanted to, yeah, it would only take them a couple months to do it. But considering it's been decades and they haven't done it, that shows like an immense amount of restraint. And I mean, like, this is kind of why, you know, like, this is why you get places like the DPRK that make nukes and stuff like that, because it's like they're going to say you have them anyway. So
Mm.
you kind of need them, like, in a world where nukes exist, you
Well,
kind of just have to have them as a deterrent.
one interesting thing to note from this is the day or couple of days before the Israelis struck Iran, there were reports that Iranian intelligence managed to get hold of like hundreds of thousands of documents of compromising material and intelligence from Mossad and Israeli
Oh,
defense. And one of those things was that the inspection of nuclear arms sort of like body
mm,
was compromised and was basically cooperating with Israel and doing what Israel essentially told them to do.
yeah.
This is not like confirmed, but it's something that the Iranian press have said. There's been,
Mm,
you know, a press release about it. So it's very likely that yeah, the people who are sort of like a body, I guess you could call them an NGO, but they're not really an NGO. They're obviously just another arm of empire, basically.
yeah.
Just
Oh,
going
apparently
like,
so.
you know, yeah, you're not like doing the enrichment program properly, so
Yeah, yeah.
stop it and do it this way or whatever. Like, who knows what fuckeries they've
Mm,
tried to do. So yeah, that's
yeah.
an interesting bit of info. Yeah.
Yeah. So Iran getting bombed for just uranium enrichment. Well, yeah, Israel has undeclared nukes and, you know, just gets to do whatever they want. So Iran retaliated pretty quick with 100 plus drones and ballistic missiles at Israel. Some of them did get intercepted, but there apparently there's many holes in the Iron Dome because they were
Mm,
hitting Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, and an oil refinery in Haifa.
yeah.
Um, there's obviously we've seen Yemen attack directly, you know, to Tel Aviv and stuff before.
Yeah.
Like they've managed to get some missiles through, and it's wild because, you know, like what Yemen is doing with like, you know, like duct tape and like, you know, like repurposed, you know, like other equipment and stuff. Now Iran has like real missiles, like real, you know, like the real deal sort of thing.
And still at the same time, the Houthis joined in on these strikes as
Yeah,
well.
exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, that was another thing when they picked up Yemen got in there. I also saw a wild video of the strikes being played in like some kind of you know, like some, I don't know where it was in Yemen, but it was like one of those jumbotron. Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, with a jumbotron screen watching the strikes, and it's like Yemenis are like something else, man.
Oh yeah.
Um,
It was so
Yeah.
good. They're all about the Shia supremacy, Shia state supremacy
yeah,
I
coalition.
wish
But yeah,
I
well, I
wish
just
there
wanted
was
to
a
say
place we all
something.
got together to watch the news. Like I wish that we all just like,
yeah.
you know,
It's
Just
oh yeah.
something about the 100 drones.
Mm,
Because obviously, like one really interesting thing that we've seen happen in real time, those people who are not used to Israel's, you know, distortion of the truth and stuff like that, is that Israel is now the Hasbara is like going so hard. It's being like, look at all these babies that were killed. Look at all these, and everyone's just going, shut the fuck up.
like people
But
carrying like dogs and
oh,
stuff,
the
and it's
dogs
like,
thing pissed me
yeah,
off
yeah.
so much. Like, oh, we saved this dog. And I was like, yeah, I've seen these articles where there's like, you know, cats starving to death in Gaza
Yeah,
and dogs,
and like
you know,
eating
dying of
corpses and shit. It's like,
literally like eating
yeah.
their owners and stuff. Like, come on, man, we're not stupid. But the 100 drones thing was a really interesting thing because that was only reported by the IDF.
Oh, really?
And yeah, I saw an interview on Electronic Intifada with Ali Abu Nimr and someone else at the University of Tehran that was involved in the nuclear enrichment program. He said that the 100 drones were more likely to have come from insurgents in Iraq, insurgents being
Ah,
resistance movement insurgents in Iraq, not necessarily people who are against, Iran. They are probably insurgents against the puppet regime in Iraq,
mm,
and the Gulf states and stuff. So it's more likely that it was that because obviously
yeah.
Iran has a lot heavier hardware. Which you're probably gonna, we're gonna probably talk about a little bit later as well. But it's just crazy that like, yeah, the IDF is just like, yeah, we destroyed all these drones, bro, and they're just like baby drones. They needed help from the RAF sent
Mm.
F-35s to intercept these drones.
Mm.
Yeah, so it's
Uh,
just crazy. The Hasbro is just going mental.
Yeah, I mean, I feel
mm.
like that's like the thing, right? It's like everyone has been waiting to take a shot at Israel for so long that as soon as you got you got your Google alerts set up for like, Tel Aviv bombed or whatever, everyone gets a little ping and they all like run
It's
to
go
the
time.
war room, the command
Yeah.
center's just
It was
like,
like
you've got the drones charged. Like, yeah.
a whole bunch of people like in the group chat just being like, yeah, we're gonna condemn Israel. Yeah, we're gonna condemn Israel. We're bombing Israel. We're going for
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to like. I was chatting to a friend earlier today about some of the like Netanyahu Trump split, kind of like not split, but like tensions between them and how that's reported. And she was saying
Mm,
like she feels like it's really, really over-reported, and I feel like it is too. Like I feel like the cost we've talked about this before on the show. Like the cost of supporting Israel is definitely something Trump wants to get away from. But like
Yeah.
I think that at the same time they want to help Israel more covertly to make other countries around more afraid of attacking Israel and thinking that
Oh,
like
yeah.
Israel on its own without support is a much more like yeah like a force to be reckoned with much more than it
Yeah.
actually is.
Well, I'm
Yeah,
so
yeah.
glad that you're my best friend. And when I was having my Wilford Brimley in the thing moment of thinking like Trump was going to recognize a Palestinian state, what I didn't realize that all of that news was coming from the Israeli papers. It was
Oh,
all coming
yeah.
from the Jerusalem Post, the Times of
Mm.
Israel, saying like within minutes he's going to announce a Palestinian state, and it's like fucking hell, man. Like, I'm so stupid. Like,
Yeah,
of
it's
course they were announcing that to try and make Iran think that,
Yeah.
the US doesn't care about Iran anymore or whatever. Yeah, it's so obvious now.
it's hard with like a country that uses so much just like bold-faced lying propaganda as like Israel, or for that matter, the US does, like that you just feel gaslit by
Yeah.
a ton of the time, and then like it's easy to like be so focused on what the propaganda we had this week where like I saw the reporting on the strikes, and then Mule was messaging like one of the Discord channels being like, this misinfo is going around. Don't believe this thing. And I was like, I'm confused because I haven't seen the misinfo. I've seen the strikes, and I don't even know what the lie is they're telling.
Yeah. Okay, well, so we'll wrap this one up a little bit. So, yeah, obviously America had some kind of heads up that something like this was going to happen because they got all their non-essential military personnel from nearby bases out in the days leading up to the strikes. Yeah, and so yeah, both Russia and China have made big statements condemning Israel, whereas, the US did the classic, like they have a right to defend themselves, which is wild because the first American statement about Israel having a right to defend itself came before, so after the Israeli attack and before the retaliation, which is like just kind of gives the hand away, right? Like, you know, so yeah, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey also condemned Israel. As we said, the Houthis joined the strikes at the same time. Um, yeah, and so there is obviously threats of continual escalation. Iran may possibly close the Strait of Hormuz, which is like a global oil choke point for like a supply line. And yeah, and Netanyahu is vowing to burn Tehran if the attacks continue. So yeah, IDF has now begun moving their headquarters to a base underneath a hospital, which like I think everyone could understand the irony in that, because so the base that got hit by the strikes, the Kyria, that is in it's in a residential area. It's like that's always been their thing, that most, and I mean that's the same even with the bases that were hit in on October 7th, like these military bases were in civilian settlements, all that kind of stuff. Like they do this to make it it's like literally like the human shields thing. So that's what they're doing now. They're going underneath the hospital, like the classic projection kind of thing. And yeah, so but just before jumping on stream this morning, I checked the news and also saw that about 5 hours ago now, I think, 5 car bombs detonated in Tehran that have been reported. They've been reported as Israeli car bombs. Israel hasn't taken like actual responsibility for them yet, but like Turkish media, like obviously Iranian media, and I think also some Israeli sources have mentioned Mossad link. But is that just speculation? I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
Um,
I think like one of the most interesting things that I've seen so far is, of all news channels, Fox News were on the ground in Tel Aviv the night of the first strikes against Israel, the retaliation strikes. And this guy, God bless him, Fox News. I never thought I'd say you got to hand it to Fox News. He was just trying to do his job, which is journalism. And the guy's surname is Yingst. I can't remember his first name, but he's the correspondent for Fox News in Israel. And he is like showing people around and the camera, and he's like, so this is Israel's version of the Pentagon, and as you can see here, there's massive damage. And then a fucking IOF fascist goes, go away, move away, don't film here. And it's like, oh bro, it's too late. We've got it. It's on Fox News Live. They're just like, yeah, nah. The Pentagon, the IDF Pentagon did not get hit. Don't believe what the Iranian Shia propaganda network Fox News is telling you. They definitely did not hit the IDF headquarters. Yeah, it's so fucking funny.
yeah.
Oh god, yeah, crazy. Check that out. That's on if you're on Blue Sky, the account that posted that is the IDF Hannibal Brigade. That's like at hannibalbrigade.biz. That person always posts pretty good. I think they're on all the Telegram channels, so they always post videos and stuff like that on there of all that stuff.
Wild. Yeah. Well, why don't we segue into Mule? You can tell us a little bit about what Palestine Action have been up to.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mentioned this in my last video, but I think it's super important to remember that when a state acts like this in the way that we've just been discussing, they are normally at the weakest that they've ever been. Just lashing out. Zionism as an ideology in general is it's open season in terms of the ideology. Like, it is so weak. There is so much against the idea that Israel is an okay state to have in our world. Everybody knows that the way that they act, and that they're committing genocide, and that they're a huge belligerent in the region. More and more people are waking up, and now is the time to do something. And Palestine Action have not been lazy in that regard. They've also been doing a lot of actions. So one of the first ones that they did, this is actually the most recent one, I believe, is they hit Permoid Industries. Permoid Industries is a manufacturing company based in Durham. It turned out that they were sending ammo boxes from the UK to, this is Pal Action UK, because I do have to remember that Palestine Action has got, organizations in pretty much every imperial core country at this point. The Palestine Action UK, it's a factory in Durham, UK, that had been exposed as sending ammo boxes. So this is boxes full of ammunition for even the heaviest kind of artillery. They were sending 1,000 boxes, I believe. I think it was somewhere in the region of 1,000 boxes from the period of, I think it was a year or something. I might have to check the details on that, but it's a lot. They've been sending like a lot of ammunition to Israel. The Pal Action essentially got to one of the factories, and it is just actually shocking, really, that all of these IOF death factories are not upping their security in any way, shape, or form, because it looks from the video footage that PAL Action got into the factory and caused some damage again, which will, of course, impede the imperialist efforts in Israel, the genocidal efforts in Israel that are being, sort of broadcast on our screens right now. So that is a huge action that is probably going to have massive ramifications for the Zionist entity. So they hit that one factory in Durham. They also hit JP Morgan. JP Morgan have been targeted a few times over the last few years, maybe even the last decade. They decreased their investments in Israeli weapons manufacturing, or just Israeli businesses in general, by 50%. I can't remember when this was. I think we might have reported on this on Red Planet at some point. But they obviously 50% is not enough. It needs to be 0%. So PAL Action targeted them by smashing windows. Some of their actionists smashed windows. And again, another action that has been done this week is more targeting of insurance company that yours truly used to work for, Allianz, that I also caused a bit of a nightmare for him in leaving when I found all this stuff out. But they have been hit in multiple offices all over the UK with red paint being sprayed over the offices, windows broken in some instances, and also targeting of certain entrances and having actionists lock into what I think are either cement or filler. The kind of wall insulation filler that makes foam and it hardens foam inside suitcases. So having actionists putting their arm in suitcases, filling it with filler or some kind of cement. And I don't think it's actually on their arm. I think they're in a tube that they're locked into as well. But that's obviously like a huge pain for the cops to remove them. So they disrupted the business of Allianz for quite some time. So as always, massive solidarity with Palestine Action. Great work. It's obviously so important right now to do anything that you can legally within the law. I would never tell anyone to break the law, of course. To speak out against Zionism. And I would recommend listening to an interview with Frank McGuinness on the Electronic Intifada. Frank McGuinness is a UK based, I think he's based in London, socialist lawyer. Barrister who has been standing up for people, including the guy who worked for Arsenal Football Club, who was banned for posting about Israel on his social media. I can't remember his name. I think his name is Mark. Can't remember his surname. He's representing him, I believe, or at least knows someone who's representing him. But he does a great interview with the Electronic Intifada where he is talking about how it is so weak right now and how there's a growing number and a growing network of lawyers who will represent you. He has very good techniques on how to defend people in court, especially when they're up against actual Zionists. When you think about these companies, who they're bringing as their witnesses, who they're bringing as their defense, they are actually just Zionists. And the way that Frank McGuinness has been described as questioning these people is, you're a Zionist. Yeah, okay, yeah, so that means you support Israel. Yeah, okay, and Israel is an apartheid state. Yeah, and they will go, oh, well, no, and then they'll point to literally the law in Israel that says there is only self-determination allowed for the Jewish people in Israel. That is apartheid. That's the definition of apartheid. Okay, so you support an apartheid state. End of argument. He could shut the book at that point, and it's very interesting that's kind of like the defense and where it's gone to. So I would recommend that just in terms of how important it is to speak out and do something to support Palestinians at this time. Anyway, Soph, do you want to tell us about something a bit closer to home in terms of the horrors?
Yeah, 100%. So there have been riots this week in Ballymena, in Northern Ireland. So people don't know about this. These are racist riots. They are quite similar to the Southport. It was Southport, right? Riots in England earlier this year. Let's get into it. So Ballymena, a town in County Antrim, Northern Ireland, saw racist rioting and arson attacks targeting facilities housing migrants this week. This comes after two teenage boys charged with the sexual assault of a teenage girl in Ballymena were reported by police to have used a Romanian interpreter to plead not guilty. Several teenagers were arrested and charged with rioting after a video was streamed live to social media of the rioters clashing with police, setting cars and buildings on fire, and seeking out anyone foreign to target with violence. On one stream, for example, voices could be heard saying, "There's someone in that room inside in the burning building," to a response of, "But are they local? If they're local, they need out. If they're not local, let them stay there." Yeah, I mean, so like this is obviously a horrible situation. The rollout of the very militarized police in Northern Ireland against like it was a very similar crowd to the racist rioters that there were in England recently, like a bunch of teenage boys, but also some like older guys. Yeah, I think we've already said so much like when we were reporting on Southport and the riots that happened. Was it last year? Sorry, the Southport riots, and how like the deprivation of areas leads to this stuff. So I want to talk a little bit about how the British media is reporting on this because I think that is worth a little examination. So
Just to confirm, you were just trying to confirm if the Southport riots were last year.
yes,
Yeah, they were. Yeah, they were last year. Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
The Southport riots last year. Okay. So various news outlets have published similar kinds of stuff to what we saw with the Southport riots last year, where if people don't remember, it was very much the same, like a crime being committed by someone who is considered like not us, sparked a bunch of racists to go and attack immigration facilities, which is obviously just like frustrating to see this kind of response, right? Because it's just like these are some of the most vulnerable people in society. They're literally in like temporary state accommodation on their way to being like properly able to join society and like live the rest of their lives. Like, it's horrible. But so one think piece in The Guardian concluded that some communities just don't like outsiders. That was The Guardian's Ireland correspondent writing like a think piece about it. And I just think this kind of interrogation, like this is kind of like very lazy and a lack of proper interrogation of what's going on here to just say like they just don't like outsiders. The piece also said like, plenty of places in Northern Ireland have it better off in some ways than lots of England and Wales. And I'm like, right, but what about Scotland? And also what about London? And also like they have it better than some places in England and Wales. Like some places in England and Wales have it really, really, really bad. It's part of a whole media landscape, right, which benefits the ruling class because it paints the working class as these sort of unconscious animals, just like operating on like subconscious libidinal instinct. And I guess we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get to the main topic of the show, which is going to be the LA riots, and how we discuss violence and like impulses towards violence by politically like motivated people. When the UK media talks about this kind of stuff, like bigoted rioting by the working class, it paints the working class as one, like inherently bigoted, like it's a fundamental characteristic of the working class, and also just like unthinking and like buffoonish. Like there was also a headline in the Belfast Telegraph, I think, which was reporting on like one of the rioters got hit in the testicle by a police baton. And it's just like reporting this kind of detail is only for comic effect. So it's just trying to say like, hoo hoo ha ha, isn't like the working class like silly and dumb and disgusting? And it's all this like masochistic loathing and like hatred of the working class by the working class, this like vile caricature of people in poverty for poor people to do the 2-minute hate but at themselves, so that we don't see any way to like work together unless it's to work together to attack more vulnerable people than us. Yeah, like saying like, oh, some communities just don't like outsiders. Like the whole population used to be illiterate, right? Like there was a point by which every human being on earth could not read and write, and now there are like different literacy rates in different areas depending on how much education was like funded and invested in, and like people can learn. We are learning animals. We are, the wise ape, right? That's the whole deal with us, isn't it? And we're meant to be able to learn things, and to say as if these people have never like been given like sorry, as if these people have been given like a chance to learn like progressive ideals and then just like got made a grunt and like sloped away. It's just like it's disgusting. Yes, they're I'm not saying that education is the whole thing. It's just that like a well-funded environment of like well thought out policies to help integrate people into society like might not have stopped the stabbing that started the Southport riots, might not have stopped the sexual assault that started the Ballymena riots, but it might have stopped the people responding to it by thinking that this one person doing this is like representative of the group being evil and needing destruction to protect the in-group from them, right?
Mm.
Yeah. Anyway, it's just very, yeah, frustrating how it's being reported on as well as the situation itself. It's just like, yeah, an already frustrating situation being made worse by the useless, like Oxbridge educated journalists who just do a navel gaze, wax lyrical about it. Yeah, that's my thoughts on reports on race riots and why they suck. Tim, you have some more stuff that sucks, and it's some more political violence.
Yeah, wow. So far-right gunman Vance Bolter has assassinated two Democratic lawmakers. Um, wait, so no, he killed two people and injured one. So one was a lawmaker and her husband. They're the ones that got killed. And then the other, John Hoffman, the lawmaker, he was injured. Him and his wife were both injured. So yeah, with Hoffman's death, this means that Minnesota's Democratic majority in the state house is now at risk, which is interesting because this particular guy, Bolter, was a Trump supporting anti-abortion extremist who's still on the run. And in his vehicle, they found a bunch of like a manifesto, basically, and a list. They haven't released the manifesto yet. I'm sure, like someone will leak it at some point or something. But the list is known to include a bunch of Democrat politicians and a whole bunch of abortion related targets. So these are like Planned Parenthood places, like people running like any kind of like charity that supports that kind of stuff, politicians and stuff. So it seems like this was, like there's this whole thing going around where they're like his motives are unclear. It's like, oh, okay, well, but so we know that this threatens the Dem majority in the state house now. There's a bunch of legislation that affects things like abortion that is currently kind of making its way through the house. So like I mean, I think it's pretty clear cut, and it seems like it could almost have been, I think, more effective political violence than people are giving it credit for. They're like, oh, this guy just wanted up to, like he wanted to kill a bunch of abortion fucking supporters or whatever, where it's like, no, I think this is like, I think this is a little bit more planned out than that.
So something interesting I wanted to include here, because it's not in the notes, is that this guy was going all around the world,
Oh yeah,
apparently.
yeah.
Have you seen this, Tim?
So he is so he spent a lot of time in Africa. He's an evangelical Christian, and over there he spent a lot of time as like a missionary and a preacher. And he is, yeah, like a very like he is like he's extremely like that kind of absolutely punishing evangelical freak. Um yeah, and there have been people coming out saying, "Oh, he's a Tim Walz appointee." He's trying to say that he's like a Democrat or on the left or whatever
It's
like that.
so
But
stupid.
he was appointed by Tim Walz on a multi-partisan kind of like low-level business advisory board where
Yeah.
it's multi-partisan. They wanted a variety of views, and this guy is like, yeah, he's like a registered Republican and all that kind of stuff. Um,
So
But yeah,
the crazy thing that I saw, and this is like, it's more and more evidence that queerphobia in the imperial periphery is an exported colonial thing.
mm,
You know, he was in the DRC, Democratic Republic
yeah,
of the Congo, literally doing transphobic sermons.
yeah.
If you Google this, you could see these videos where he's doing it. It's like, do not let these fucking losers anywhere, even if you know people and in real life and they say, oh, wasn't this guy like an extreme leftist? Like, just literally go on your YouTube app and just Google France Vance Bulter sermon Congo, and it will come
Yeah.
up with him spewing queerphobic hatred.
Mm,
And you know, just show it to the person and be like, "Do you think that he is a left winger?"
yeah,
It's
yeah.
just there. The evidence is just there. So
Yeah, and I mean, obviously that as well as the abortion stuff ties directly into a lot of the
yeah,
stochastic terrorism pushed in by the right. You know, like there's like no real meaningful distinction between like the right and the far right in America anymore. You
absolutely.
know,
Yeah.
um, so someone identified as his roommate confirmed his ultra conservative anti-choice beliefs, and you know, like he's a huge Trump loyalist. Um, yeah, so this guy ran a security company over here as well, where he was like a full-on, you know, like those like fake cop security LARPA dudes. So
I,
he had like, you know, like police equipment and all this kind of stuff, you know, like just all like military surplus cop shit. He bought the same, and like there's people have found comments from him from his business account online talking about how he intentionally bought the same SUVs as the local law enforcement and all this kind
yeah.
of stuff. And so his whole thing was, even as a security guard, he was LARPing as a cop.
I think, Tim, I might be wrong in this, but I was reading somewhere, and I'll get some confirmation in this, and I'll confirm it before we get to the end of this bit. But like, I'm fairly certain that in Minnesota, the state has some contracts with private security for firms to do
Mm,
basically private policing.
yeah,
And he did do that. He certainly did like buy that stuff, so he looked exactly like the
yeah.
police. And he also had in Minnesota, cops have a registration plate that literally just reads police. So
Mm,
the cop cars like don't have like a regular registration or something. So he had that on all of his cars as well.
yeah,
And I think he just got away with that because he had like a contract with the state. I'm gonna get
yeah.
confirmation on that, but also important to know that I think his private company was called Pretoria Security.
It was like Praetorian Guard or some shit
It's
like that. It's
straight
so
away,
fascist.
as soon as you see it, it's like, bro, this guy was such a Nazi. Like, come
Yeah,
on, like, are you joking?
yeah,
Yeah, I'll have
yeah.
a look into that Minnesota thing.
Yeah, so he rocks up to these houses in full, you know, police style outfit with the cars and everything like that. In some of in some of the security footage we've seen, he was wearing one of those like really bad full head rubber bald man masks, which people have like, I mean, there's like a lot of confusion, and you see all these like even news anchors and journalists and stuff like that being like, did he shave his head for this, or that doesn't look like the suspect? And a lot of people being like, this is a conspiracy, that's not him. And it's like, no, you fucking idiots, he's wearing a rubber mask. It's like you can just like zoom in, you can see it. It's so fucking bad, like it's fucked around the eyes, it's
Yeah,
whatever. But yeah, but
It
so
looks like that. I think you should leave sketch where he's like, "There's too much shit on
there's too much
me."
shit on
yeah,
me.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
It looks like
exactly,
a
yeah.
gross cross between that and the Michael Myers Inside Out William Shatner mask.
Yeah.
It's like it's actual horror movie shit.
Well, yeah, so yeah, I mean, and this is the age where cops are showing up to people's houses and not identifying themselves, arresting people, you know, like we've got ICE just like fully blank bagging people and sending them out. And then this guy is going up unidentified, you know, like to people's houses and straight up murdering them. So it's like, how do they how do they want people to respond when similarly dressed and equipped ICE agents show up to their house and refuse to identify themselves? I feel like, you know, like if something like this happens to you, you know, you have some guy that looks like he's from the fucking purge shows up at your doorstep. Like, what is stopping you from just like, you know, like unloading a full clip through the door and saying you feared for your life, and it's like,
Whether or not
like,
you owned a gun, I guess.
yeah, exactly, um yeah, absolutely insane situation right now. So yeah, the Dems one seat majority is now in jeopardy. So yeah, Republicans could potentially roll back abortion rights, bunch of labor protections, all kinds of stuff. But yeah, even if this Bolter guy is caught, the system that radicalized him, which is Fox News, MAGA, the GOP itself, like they remain untouched. And it's like they get lucky. Some guy has just gone out there and done this thing that they didn't ask him to, not directly, like there's obviously stochastic terrorism is like a huge part of this, but he's gone out and potentially got them a majority. They're going to take advantage of that.
Mm-hmm.
So
I don't have any
yeah,
confirmation on the private security contract stuff, so I'm not sure about the actual validity of that claim. But yeah, I mean, regardless, like the guy was entirely dressed up as a cop, LARPing as a cop. It doesn't really matter, to be honest. It's like this guy is just like a horrific Nazi piece of shit.
yeah, absolutely. So yeah, why don't you give us a little fill in on what's been happening with the Gatwick 8 though?
Yeah, so this is quite an interesting one. So obviously, Just Stop Oil wrapped up. We reported on that earlier this year. They obviously still have lots of activists that are involved in court proceedings, in charges. They have to defend themselves against charges that have been brought against them by the state for actions that they've participated in. And one of those groups of activists, the Gatwick 8, the Gatwick Airport 8, have been acquitted after a judge has ruled insufficient evidence of serious disruption. So again, this is another example of Just Stop Oil doing a fairly radical action, and their activists getting away with it. And important to remember that actually, there's a lot of Just Stop Oil activists who are in jail on remand. There are a lot of political prisoners still, actually held on remand. So, being treated as guilty until proven innocent, which is
Yeah,
completely fucked.
yeah. I feel like
Um,
protesters need to be adding free political prisoners to like the general list of demands. Like
every
if
single one. Yeah.
yeah, because if you're protesting for like stopping climate change, or you're protesting for like freeing Palestine, like a part of the premise of agreeing with that is also that you should free all the people who did anything like in service of that.
Mm.
Like if people are sabotaging Elbit factories, or people are like blocking motorways to protest climate change, it's like, oh yeah, sorry, blocking airports, yeah, whatever. It's just like, yeah,
And also, what you have to remember is that ever since we had John on the show, John and Matt. I think Matt was the guy's name, but I'm certain that the other guy was John from Prisoner Solidarity Network, and they were basically telling us, this is one person who had 35 years of experience or so in the prison system in the UK, and he spoke to so many people inside, outside, about the way that the state just essentially criminalizes people, and will just, if they want to, they will just create charges, and if you're poor enough and you can't defend yourself, you will just end up institutionalized for as long as they want you to be in prison for. And if you go into prison when you're very young and you've been in care, you can end up institutionalized and going in and out of prison for your entire life. And it is just like, look, this is just something that the state can do. It's something that the state has power over us in as working class people. If you think that you're exempt from it, you're not. Every single one of us, has a threat of going to prison for a very, very long time just because we associate with leftists, because this is the way that the fascist imperialist state and powers operate in the imperial core. And I'm not saying they don't operate that way in the imperial periphery. There's a lot of different ways that things happen, but certainly that's the way it happens in the UK, the US. I'm sure it happens in Aotearoa as well. And Yeah, we have to remember that again, if you're going to engage in actions, it is very, very, risky, and it heightens that risk of you being, put away and put in a cage, and essentially tortured, in the ways that prison tortures people. So, absolutely, before you engage in actions, I think it's very important that people remember that fact, before you know what you're getting into. And I'm not trying to scare people away from doing actions. I think these things are necessary, and again, I'm not urging anyone to break the law, but as we have seen here in this case, the Gatwick 8, the judge ruled there's not enough evidence to say that they broke this law, and I think that some of these people were held on remand for some time and they had to be released on bail, and so you will end up going to prison regardless, even if it turns out that it's that you didn't do anything. So be very, very aware of that. There are some statements from the Gatwick 8, and who basically told a little bit of their story. We've got one of the actionists, Alex Thornton, 21, a student from Falmouth, said, I went to Gatwick Airport to record a Just Stop Oil protest. I was arrested and charged with an obscure breach of the Airports Act, which I don't even think is a real law. My arresting officer had taken a great interest in my notebook, which had some notes from a couple of books I'd been reading. In his witness statement, he said it contained, quote, ramblings of a man who read too many extreme books. And it was literally just poetry books. And he said it feels like I'm on trial for reading poetry. This is the I don't want to denigrate pigs too much, but this is the mind of a hog. This is the mind of like a filthy, disgusting, horrible person who is like, oh my God, look at this gay writing. Like, a far left lunatic.
And every one of those like cops has got like the Turner Diaries in his glove box, and he's like, "This is just good fiction."
This isn't even fiction, bro. This is real.
This is real reading for men. This is man's reading. It's about batteries and the Bay of Pigs invasion. You know what I mean? Like, it's just fucked. Like, anyway, so there was another statement from Tepera Berman, the chair of Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty, and he said that the citizens standing up to raise awareness of how fossil fuels are causing lethal heat waves, floods and droughts, and threatening our children and our health are not criminals. History will remember them as heroes. Our laws have been distorted by the wealth and influence of the oil and gas companies that continue to call the shots to protect their obscene profits over public good. And yeah, I don't know if I went into too much of the actual action, but essentially they locked on at Gatwick Airport with lock-on devices and essentially just blocked the check-in sort of area of Gatwick Airport in one of the terminals. And that was that, basically. They didn't do anything else. They were there for a few hours, I believe. The passengers who had flights, a lot of them just ended up stepping over them to check in, and then eventually security services were redirecting passengers to other areas. So it was like, they made a statement, they disrupted service for a bit, and it was a good action. It definitely rose awareness. I think the more and more that people do these actions, the more and more that people are learning about them. Absolutely. And they're going to make the more extreme versions of the actions, which are certainly to come soon, seem like fucking hell compared to the stuff that they've been doing. So that is that. Solidarity with Just Stop Oil and all political prisoners. But yeah, that's the end of the news section. And well done to me, who didn't write any news segments until the literal start of the show today. I'm not denigrating my wonderful co-hosts; they've done great work, but I was definitely in squeaky bum mode at the start of the show, and I think I did all right. But yeah, we want to remind you as well that we're a show, and if you want me to not be a lazy, late layabout who is constantly writing news stories at the last minute and freaking everybody out, and our producer, please give Red Planet some money. Go to patreon.com/red_planet, and I promise I will stop being a little bastard and upsetting Conrad every time. If you go there, if we get more patrons this week, I will be such a good boy. I will do all my news stories 2 days before the show. This is me doing protest actions against Conrad, self
against Conrad.
This doesn't make any sense. I'm not doing this.
Support the show on Patreon. We have a documentary we're working on, the Zad documentary. You want to see it? Support us. The more Red Planet, more money, more Red Planet. That's the deal. Let's go on to the rest of the show. We'll talk about it more at the end.
Yes.
Let's talk about the outbreak of political violence across the continental United States. Yay!
Whoa.
Okay, so I said earlier that the No King's Day protests were like liberal and peaceful in their like organizing. Like what I wanted to clarify that what I meant by that was the intended events were, you know, peaceful, like cooperation with cops, having like political figures give big speeches, all this stuff. There was a spate of violence in response to this from the right wing, right, like across the country yesterday. 2 people dead in Minnesota. Well, sorry, that's the shooting. Scrap that. There was a mass shooting at a march in Salt Lake City. There were car attacks at 2 of the protests. Police, like, obviously were super violent towards a bunch of protesters. This comes off the back of there being like a week of rioting in LA that we were talking about last week. And then there was also the Democrat lawmakers killed in Minnesota. So I think, oh, and sorry, that's not even all. There was also an attack by Patriot Front on Pride Parade yesterday, which like, even though it was like, you know, it was completely beat the fuck out. People of Missouri were not putting up with it, drove Patriot Front back to their box truck rental apparently, and they just had to go home and cry about it. But yeah, there is a lot of political violence happening all at once in America right now. So I feel like we should have a chat about political violence.
Yeah, absolutely. I think now's a good time to remind people of the meaning of the word riot. The meaning of the word riot in both terms is a violent disturbance of the peace by a crowd, or to riot, a verb, is to take part in a violent public disturbance. And overwhelmingly, the people who are doing the verb of rioting, taking part in a violent public disturbance, are the cops. The cops are the people who are initiating violence in every single instance. There have certainly been instances of people being violent towards products, the Waymos. I don't know if this was something that we reported on last week. I think we might have hit this in the news last week. I can't remember exactly what we spoke about, but there were a bunch of Waymos that were set on fire in the LA protests a week ago, and that, you know, these are unmanned Ubers that have been used
because I hadn't heard of them first. I had people talking about Waymos, and I was like, I think we need to kind of like explain just for everyone.
I thought they were shopping trolleys because people were saying how plastic they are, and I was like, they set shopping trolleys on fire? I was like, how do you do that?
Sounds like like in a 90s sitcom with like an alien, and they'd be like, oh no, not Waymo. Like,
that's crazy.
Oh no, they set fire to my friend.
Oh no.
I love
Waymo and the LA riots.
I love that post that was like, I'm so glad I spent years programming Waymos to feel pain. It was all worth it because of this. I just want to say like about this, like, it's so important, as Mule says, to identify that like it's the state that initiates the violence, like the vast majority of the time. And at the same time, it's important to, like, there are a lot of people who one way or another are doing quite like a hand-wringing take, which is like, what we're doing isn't violence, what they do is violence, which is trying to be like, you know, we absolutely have no like moral culpability for anything bad in any way, because we're not doing the evil bad thing, which is violence. Like, this is, I'm sorry, but like, stopping fascism is going to take some violence. Like, Kwame Ture has this great response to this questioner one time from this guy comes up to the mic from the audience at an event he's at and is like, I just don't support violence. And Kwame Ture is like, if you were a slave and I was your master, and the only way you could be free was to pick up a rock and bash me over the head with it, would you? And he's like, and the guy just abandons the mic and starts walking away because it's just like, yeah, right, you just would. And
Right.
the thing is true here that like defeating fascism, how I defeated fascism using only the power of love by Luigi.
Yeah.
Part one, I discovered it is impossible to defeat. But anyway, the point here
Yeah.
is that like, it is good to, it is the glorification and fetishization of violence is reactionary. Like that
Yeah.
also needs to be clear. Like that is a
Mm.
reactionary thing. Like to want violence, to lust
Yeah.
after violence for violence's sake, and that's why the left is trying to only use the correct amount of violence. Now, if you think all violence is bad in all cases, if you think that some violence is good in some cases, if you think violence is good on your side, if you think violence is good against people who have more power than you, any number of positions on it, we're all working towards using, you know, the minimal amount of violence to get to a better world,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And
Yeah.
but
Typically,
you can't
yeah,
just
you
say
know,
we're
it's
not
like,
doing any violence because it's
yeah.
violence against property. Like under a capitalist system, the capital someone has is their material, like the material capital they have is their ability to be and do in the world. And when you destroy a bit of it, you are doing a violence to them. It's just
Yeah.
like if they have a lot of it, it doesn't matter very much to them. If you salted a farmer's field, you could see that that's a violence to them, right?
Yeah.
If that farmer has 10,000 fields, it's less of a big deal, but it's still
Yeah.
violence.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like Lenin spoke a lot about political violence, and he always kind of framed it as like this is a necessary tool of revolution. This is not, you know, like you see a lot of kind of, you know, like this like right-wing fascists that are just like violence is how, you know, like violence is the goal, like we are going to go in, it's going to be bloody, we're going to like we're going to be like Spartans and all this kind of stuff, whereas in a lot of Lenin's writing about political violence, he kind of had this tone of more like, we have to be real about this. Like one day there's going to be some violence, like that's necessary. And I mean, I think he was like pretty clear about being like, oh, because the state isn't just going to let you walk in and and like kind of seize the levers sort of thing like that. Like I think, yeah, it was like the replacement of the bourgeois by the proletarian state is impossible without a violent revolution, because it's like, they're even like, yeah, there's absolutely no way you can get right to the end zone without having, like what we've seen with like the police showing up, like even just like, and I mean, even unofficial, but like the kind of like brown shirt violence where it's like, this is not the official militarized arm of the state reacting, but this is like, like these are the freaks that have been like deputized by the like the fucking the culture war
Zizek's I like Zizek's language of excesses, right? Like you can people who see what a system is for and then they do it too much and the system has to disavow them because they're doing it too much.
I
like
mean,
fascists are the
this is
excess.
like what this Bolter guy has done, basically. Like this is exactly it, and what he's done has worked seemingly in favor of the Republican Party.
Stochastic terror uses the excesses of the system like in a calculated way towards a goal, even though it is obviously stochastic means that it's this random, unreliable thing. Like it still pushes towards a goal.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, so even like the reasoning might be naive, like this guy might be like, oh, I just gotta save the babies, whatever like that. It's like, oh well, this works into the greater political project, even if he isn't directly aware or engaged with that.
Yeah.
After Luigi, I just find it really embarrassing a whole bunch of people who were hooting and hollering when, and to be clear, I'm using Luigi as like metonymy or a synecdoche for the assassination of Brian Thompson, because Luigi Mangione is accused but innocent until proven guilty. After Luigi, like all these people are hooting and hollering, and now a bunch of the same people are saying like, it's not violence what we're doing, it doesn't count as violence, it's not against a person. It's like, if the same thing, like if the creepy dude in the rubber mask had gone and shot like two like evangelical ministers who are responsible for like billions of dollars that move through like the industrial hate complex, and it was going to
Mm,
cause like material damage to like their fascist empire. Like there would be a bunch of the same people saying like, I don't care, actually, this is good. And it's like you just have to confront that. Like you just can't be like saying like we're not doing any violence and the police are doing all the violence. It's valid to say the police are doing the majority of the violence,
yeah.
even in the case of just if you were trying to like measure the harm done, that's very clear that the police are doing the majority of the
Exactly.
violence.
Yeah.
Mm,
But yeah,
I think a really good way of looking at the concept of violence is always through imperialism and colonialism. Like if you look at Palestine, for example, and any other colonial endeavor where a foreign entity has entered into a land and attempted to settle, and that has required the murdering of indigenous people. The reason that there have been resistances is because they've had no other choice. There is simply no
mm,
other choice. People constantly say all the time, and it's sickening. It gets really to my back teeth. Where are the Mandelas of Palestine? Where are the
yeah.
Mandelas? Where are the peaceful protesters? Where are the Martin Luther Kings? They were killed. They were
Yeah.
murdered. They were assassinated. Yasser Arafat, who made the most gains for Palestinian rights and a possible two-state solution in the history of Palestine, was literally poisoned in a Paris hotel, in a foreign hotel. And that is the extent to which, if you
Yeah.
engage in peaceful, as people say, non-violent resistance, that you will get liberation.
Yeah.
And then after it, now we've got the ongoing Holocaust in front of our
Yeah.
very eyes.
I saw some freaks being like, oh, like, but well, they have guys like, Marwan Barghouti, but nobody listens to him or whatever. And it's like, oh, you mean that guy that has been like imprisoned by Israel for like forever, and that
Yeah.
like, like that people do actually love, and even like Hamas was like, we have been trying to free this man. We want to negotiate to free him, even though
Hmm.
they know that like like when polled, people will have voted for him over them, and it's just like, well, you won't let them have their, like these people, like these, I guess, like more like liberal kind of figures or whatever. So
Exactly.
it's like it doesn't matter. Like you may as well be Hamas if you can't
Yeah.
even be Barghouti. Like,
Exactly. This is
yeah.
the thing. It's you simply cannot. And again, like, let's put it in another lens. If liberals listen to this show and they don't understand what we're talking about, you can say, okay, violence that is committed against someone's material property is still violence. Okay, so in that case, you then agree that if you are made homeless by the police and you die, that is also violence. You
Mm,
recognize that if you are sacked by your boss and you die as a result, that is because of violence. You recognize if you're a trans person, you have your healthcare taken away, you die as a result, that is violence. Those are all indirect forms of violence that directly come from a person's material conditions being taken away. So, what do you want? Do you want violence where people set Waymos on fire and no one dies, or do you want violence where people are made homeless, had healthcare denied,
mm,
fucking not resuscitated, had do not resuscitate orders put on them by the state during COVID, which is something that happened in the UK to disabled people. We're talking even people with fucking autism. This is the level that we're at, where it's like, again, if you're a liberal and you're listening to this show and you're wondering like, why are these extreme leftists getting so mad at this? It's like, this is why, because you refuse to see that the state does violence all the time. It kills people. The system of capitalism can only exist through violence. It is literally fueled by imperialism and violence. If it didn't exist, there would be no need for capitalism. There would be no threat to not participating in it. And this is why, you know, it frustrates me so much when you hear people say all the times, this is why you need capitalism, but with guardrails. Like, what are you fucking talking about? You're talking about socialism. Like, you're literally talking about socialism. You're talking about state
Yeah,
capitalism that China does.
if you're talking about like nothing being traded that people need to live, like if you're talking about everything people need to live is provided, then like that's not capitalism because it's not people living in a capitalist society, is it? Like
Yeah,
it's just people like exchanging just for fun, like
yeah,
to do a thing, you know?
literally. This is it. This is it. So yeah, I think it's really good to sort of like have this establishing conversation about like what is violence, like what is a riot. So having sort of like driven home a little bit, I think we've done that about you know the meaning of violence and what the state does and whether it's direct or indirect. It doesn't matter actually because the state will always be more violent actually than the working class. The ruling class will always be more violent. You know, let's talk about the idea of a riot. You know, a riot can certainly be described as people setting fire to some Waymos. Sure, that's fine. The image in the common vernacular that people come to when they think of riots is a load of crazy people going crazy everywhere and punching everyone and killing everyone. What they think of is like more like what's happening in Ballymena, right? Where people are actually doing pogroms and people are actually being hurt and killed in some cases. I don't know if anyone's been killed, by the way, but I know that people's homes have been targeted and that's definitely affected. You know, essentially what the fascists are doing in that regard is engaging in similar style violence, where it's like we're going to remove the material conditions of a person, a working class person who is not going to have a social safety net within this system, and they're going to probably die as a result. You know, if a bunch of migrants get who are living in a hotel, the hotel gets set on fire, there's no other place to house them, they end up homeless, they end up being put away, put in a prison, they might die in prison. That's it. They got no access to legal defense or anything like that. They're alone. That's how that goes. So that's kind of like the imagery that is conjured when people talk about riots, and I think that's why they're always referred to as this, because again, you know, what's been happening in LA is people trying to stop immigration, Gestapo agents of the state who are overwhelmingly not even remotely is there any evidence to suggest the fact that they are trained or properly, like, you know, going through any kind of due process or any kind of ideas. You know, they are literally taking people who have court dates for their immigration ruling, and then they are turning up to the court ruling, waiting for it to finish and disappearing them.
Yeah.
People
Well,
are trying to stop that from happening.
And you see, like, you even see, like, I mean, you see a lot from the right. You hear that, oh, well, just don't break the law and it won't be a problem. Just go through the legal processes. And even some liberals being like, you know, saying that, like, there was the whole, you know, there was like a huge outcry on Twitter when the, you know, the menswear guy, he had said, like, oh, everyone should just go through the legal channels and all this kind of
Just
stuff. It's
marry
like,
your illegal immigrant spouse. Just marry
yeah,
your illegal
it's
immigrant. So
like
that's how you do
these
it.
people getting black bagged at the courts after going through the channels, like, so it's like, what incentive is there to actually go through the legal channels, where it's like you go through the legal channels and you'll get, you know, like, you'll get disappeared. If you,
Mhm.
you know, if you don't, then it's like, okay, at least, you know, at least if you fly under the radar, you're not gonna get kidnapped today, you
Yeah,
know, like,
it's like you go to any like counter protest against fascists, like whether you're the original protesters and they're the counter protesters or vice versa, and you mask up, like that you will always hear from them, why are you hiding your face? What do you have to hide? Every
Get your
single
mask
time.
off.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And it's like you know why, and like it's obviously it's a waste of time to like say to them like you know why and all this. At the same time, like when fash wear masks, we hate it because we want to
Yeah.
be able to identify them and shame them to their whole communities and get them to stop and get them fucking fired for being a Nazi and all this stuff, which, by the way, is violence. Like online
Yeah.
harassment campaigns are violence. Getting people fired from their job is violence. Getting people like excluded from their community is violence. Like all this
Yeah.
stuff. And when you do it to a fascist, it is good. I'm sorry, that's an
Yeah, yeah,
uncomplicated moral position. Like, it's a good thing to do all that stuff. It's a good thing to do violence to people who are like whose whole worldview is doing
yeah.
violence to everyone in order to stop them. It just is.
Yeah, and I mean it's like it is a thing, and they're like they're so fucking fragile about that shit. Like any kind of like retaliation. It's it's similar to like even just like the shit with Israel. It's like whenever someone on the right gets like just a teaspoon of what they've been dishing out, then all of a sudden they're just like, I've been receiving death threats, my family have been put at risk, and then like someone puts up a GoFundMe and they earn like like $500,000 or some shit. So it's kind of like I feel like yeah, I think there is like a lot of people are memeing about like dark woke, but I feel like there is an era dawning where people are just like, actually it's just like it's not enough to like
Dark woke is
screenshot.
neurotic terrorism.
Yeah. Like people are just like, we can call these people out online and we can shame them, but it doesn't matter, they don't care or whatever like that. So I feel like we are going to see escalations in this kind of stuff. And like even just in general sentiment against like a lot of these right-wing freak shows, I think it's becoming like it's a lot more popular just to be, instead of being like the liberal position might have been like, oh, we just gotta like we gotta vote them out or whatever, but like I've been seeing a lot more stuff online that is like hopefully starting to figure out that like voting is not the path. Like I saw this like really well-known New Zealand academic posted something about like marching against fascists. Why don't you vote against fascists? It was like
yeah, that worked in the Weimar Germany, didn't it?
I know, yeah. And it was like, but I just saw like like a lot of like screenshots going around from people that I know that are like that I've seen on Twitter that are like super like liberals, people just being like, actually I don't think that, I'm starting to think this doesn't work, like, or like, but what happens if you can't trust the like the electoral system, or like what, or like in New Zealand we have like this like our political system means that like a party that got a tiny majority of the vote but formed a coalition has like totally just been like behind a lot of the really undemocratic stuff that we've had go through parliament stuff. So it's like what in that case, like like we didn't exactly vote for them, but you have all these tools, and voting is like the tiniest little one. Voting is like this little,
it's the thing that the bourgeoisie and bourgeois society has given you to express
like the pressure
your opinion.
valve,
So
right?
of course it doesn't actually change anything, because why would they give you a thing that can change things? Because then you might take them out of power. But I think it's like, I think it's instructive to remember this idea that the left does want to enact change with the minimum amount of violence. Like that pacifism is a useful instinct insofar as like trying to use as little violence as possible means we're focused on like more important things, because we're trying to, like, the whole theory of dual power like is not like massively focusing on like seizing the military and all that. Like that would be like the fascist like way to like the fascist like theory of revolution, like just do a military coup and just crack down on everything, like make the workers don't want to go work for you, send soldiers with guns, whatever. Like it's like instead restructuring society to serve everyone better takes organizing. And like if there were, I think we've said this a couple of times on the show, like if there were to be a general strike of literally everyone, like tomorrow, like literally everyone woke up with like a perfect vision where like Marx came to them in their sleep and was just like, this is how society should be. And they got inceptioned. Everyone on planet Earth was like, we're doing communism starting tomorrow. Like that would be a perfect non-violent revolution. Like everything would just be instantaneously changed. And if one guy who was like the richest guy in the, if Elon Musk didn't get the memo, everyone would beat him to death, and then we would carry on with an otherwise like bloodless, peaceful revolution, right? Like it's it's simply that like we're trying to build a new world, and there will be an amount of like having to defend it from the attacks by the bourgeoisie, by the establishment, by the elites, like in order to get there.
Yeah. I think it's definitely important to talk about like the significance of this happening in the USA as well, because of course that is where the seat of power of capitalism exists. I'm not saying that capitalism doesn't exist in, Modi's India or Vladimir Putin's Russia, or even in China, Xi Jinping's China, our new God King soon come, Climate Mao, can't wait. Yeah, I think that in terms of like seeing the response and seeing the way in which people are engaging with methods of protest and sort of like this demand to be non-violent and stuff, like again it's the liberals who are constantly saying don't protest in this way. Like the No Kings protest is I think a really interesting development. Of course, it's overwhelmingly liberal. So a Walmart heiress bought out an ad, and I've heard that some people have been using this as like a huge criticism of the protest and saying like, how can it be any kind of revolutionary and stuff like that? And I definitely want to like say, look, at least they're trying. Like, at least the center left are trying. They're dipping their toe into the idea of like, let's all go out and do a thing. And I know that people have been focusing on some of the horrific signs that have been there. Like, for example, if Kamala was doing this, we'd all be going back to brunch. That really seems like a fucking psyop, but who knows at this point? It's crazy because it's like, yo, do they not know that this is what we all say about them? Like, we all say that they wouldn't care if Kamala Harris was doing the same thing.
I have not seen that, but it's pretty embarrassing.
There's been a couple of signs that have basically had that message on it. And what I do want to like highlight there is that these are like maybe 3 or 4 people, and I saw one anarcho commie Conrad basically like seize the mic at one of these events and start saying like, this is not how you do it, free Palestine now, like this is what we need to do, and blah blah blah. And look, they just cut a mic off and then basically said, look, we have like a list of speakers, if you wanted to speak you should have got involved, and like told us about that. And like I guess like if you're applying for that stuff and they're like knocking you back and they're like, oh, these people are too radical, we don't want them to be around us and stuff like that, fine, then you can criticize them and you can do something like that. But if they haven't even tried to do that, I would argue that like you're not going to radicalize these wine mums by doing this. Like the way in which you do this is you attend these protests and you get into conversations with people and you start to explain to them like, look, can you see how the cops are treating you? Because pretty much not all of these protests, not all of these No Kings protests, but pretty much all of them, like the one in LA specifically, because that's where the National Guard was deployed to because of the LA, the more extreme radical riots that were happening. People who had attended the No Kings protests were basically experiencing police violence, like towards the end of the day when the police were trying to get people off the streets. And it's like, that is a radicalizing moment. If someone is already like, if they have the knowledge in their head Trump is bad, like I know it gets tired and we can all laugh at the liberals and how they say Orange Man bad and Emperor Tangerine and whatever, but like, these are radicalizing moments and we have to be there for them when these things happen to say, yo, this is what we're telling you, like look at what's happening, like this is why we have to do better, this is why we have to do more. It's a really interesting scenario where I think it's all too easy to criticize people who are protesting in this way. And again, I'm not saying go out there and hug like a fucking blue MAGA imperialist war hawk who loves Israel. Like I would never say that. Like that's stupid shit. Of course that person is just like a fascist and they've been radicalized by the UK electoral politics system. But I think not the UK, sorry, the US electoral politics system. Well, even the UK politics system has blue MAGA kind of I don't know what you call it, like the Labour right exists here, and I'm sure it does in most imperial core countries, like the conservative left, as you'd call it, but it's not. It's a fucking oxymoron. I'm not saying that like we have to like go and hug these people who have got these horrific reactionary opinions or anything like that. If someone is just like going out and it's their first protest. It's such a like a good time to be like, yo, look at this completely overreaction of police force, like the police response. Like, look how many cops there are here. Why do you think there's that many cops here? Have these conversations with people, ask them to, consider joining their orgs, ask them about themselves. I think that's all really, really good stuff. And then at this, in another breath, continue doing radical actions. I think that we have to have this, I don't want to have these cringe sort of takes of saying or being like, oh, we need a broad church and stuff like that. But like, when we went to the ZAD was a great example of what do they call it, Soph? Jay kept correcting me whenever I said it was a broad front, and they kept saying like, not a broad front, it was a broad agreement or something like a broad opinion.
I can't remember the term, but I feel like diversity of tactics captures kind of the same idea. I can't remember exactly what they were saying. Yeah, but it's diversity of tactics, exactly.
Yeah.
And I also think, not to always be harping on my own favorite tactic, but I think that assemblies would tie this stuff together well, because you have people who are frustrated. I was pitching the trans assemblies idea to people at this coalition meeting, and I was like, the DSA, and several people's eyes lit up immediately, not because they love the DSA, but they immediately saw the point I was about to make, which was like, people will meet in this space. They will not be satisfied with the pace at which things are going here. They will organize a smaller, more radical thing with other people who are also frustrated, and they'll go do that thing. And that's great. And meanwhile, like the mass of people there will, do larger scale things that will be slower and will be like less extreme or radical.
That's the pipeline, right?
And that's why it's important to remember like that rioting is not the revolution. But also that there will be some violence because the state will try to destroy the new world as it is born. This is the new world must struggle to be born.
It's already doing it. Like, this is the thing. It's like every single time, I know that a lot of our audience love Andor. I've not seen it, but there is that speech that the main guy, it's Cassian Andor. I keep wanting to say his name is like John Star Wars or something funny, but like you can't really escape it. His name's Cassian Andor. He was in Rogue One and all this stuff. Like
Bobby lightsaber.
Yeah, Bob. Bobby Death Star, Guy Snootles,
David Darkseid.
Yeah, that's it exactly. Darth Vader. So the Cassian Andor, or it's not Cassian Andor's speech, I don't even think, actually. So I think this whole bit was pointless, but anyway, it's funny. We had a bit of a laugh, didn't we, on the way? The person who does the speech, there's a person who does the speech, and this guy's got a name like Glup Shitto or like whatever it is. He does a speech where he's like, in every single dark place, even if someone is yelling and screaming for revolution, that is a push of our boundaries. Our borders are getting bigger, our borders are getting wider. Even when someone reads their first book, even when someone has their first moment of clarity, even when someone has their first realization, like, our borders are expanding, the front is getting bigger. And that's what we have to remind ourselves constantly, that this is something that will always continue to radicalize people. Being in this system radicalizes you. Again, I'm going to go back, and you'll see more of this in the doc, in the ZAD doc, because we have this interview with this amazing woman who is a activist psychiatrist, who was talking about, like, one of the things that activists forget all the time is that we forget that we're doing a lot of work to change the system. There's a lot of energy that we're putting into it, but even underneath all that, we are traumatized from the very existence of capitalism, living in the imperial core, living in imperialism, and living in capitalism is traumatizing. It doesn't matter who you are. You could be the whitest cisgender, most heterosexual guy in the entire world. If you're working class, this shit sucks and it fucks you over. You experience violence or the threat of violence constantly. You're constantly worrying about where rent is coming from. You're constantly worrying about where, you know, the next paycheck is, what it's going to be, what it looks like. If you're trained enough, you know, one thing that I'm sort of going through at the minute is like constant rejections, constant job rejections, and I know that this is like going to be a combination of AI now filtering out CVs, and also I might be on a blacklist for the action that I took against Allianz, you know, and it's like these things are traumatizing. Even if I didn't have the Allianz thing, it would still be like constant rejections, constant insecurity, constant, you know, not knowing if you're going to be able to like literally participate in society. This is traumatizing stuff. And then if you're marginalized in any way, times it by a fucking 1,000. You know, this is the reality of it. And everyone will be getting radicalized to some degree. And of course, a lot of that can become reactionary. A lot of it can be radicalized in the wrong way. But you know, again, if people are going out on in force, you know, to basically protest a guy that is definitely doing bad, like objectively a bad guy, that person knows that there's something wrong, and it's a great time to, like Soph says, you know, say to them, look, you know, there's another way. There is another way, and you're going to love this, liberal. It's not violent. You just get in a room together and have a nice chat.
This is me at work, like every day, you know, like you know, this is like a tattoo shop. There's a lot of people coming and going, there's a lot of conversations going on and stuff like that, and someone will be like complaining about something or whatever, and like I'm always the guy that is like, oh, okay, well, this, you know, like this ties into this or whatever, like that, and people are always like, wow, you know so much, and it's like, no, I know a very specific thing, and this thing, you know, like this political thing that I know happens to like underscore a lot of these things.
No,
you
I
know?
just
like,
have autism about this thing.
yeah. But I feel like I don't know if either of you have thoughts about it, but I was thinking we could maybe talk about the difference of like, you know, like riots versus revolution quickly before we kind of like wrap things
Yeah,
up.
I'd like that. I'd like that. I think like I was gonna say on the last thing we were saying, I got a Tumblr ask the other day where someone was saying something. I'm only gonna remember the gist of it, but it was just like, do you think that like bloodshed is inevitable in revolution? And like the way the question was framed was very like putting the belief on me, like it's a thing I go around saying, being like, we're gonna have to kill them all, we're gonna have to do it, there's no other way. And like I just yeah, it was just kind of bizarre. I was like, have you seen any of my work at all?
Yeah.
Literally
I mean,
only follows you on Tumblr
Yeah.
and looks at the solar stargazing stuff and like knows you're a bit of a communist.
But I was
yeah.
just really struck by it because it felt very like coincidental with this like outbreak of political violence that's happening across the US. Some of it on the left, a lot more of it on the right, a lot of the nastiest stuff on the right for now. But like it was interesting to see it because it felt like someone who is upset there is violence happening turning to me, someone who says like a better world is possible and we're going there, that's the plan, we got to all put our efforts in to get there, like to say like you support this, and it's like no, like the whole time. And this is what I'm, you know, getting at is like, as you said, Tim, like the difference between riots and revolution is just like no, like I support those people rioting because actually they're using violence in a positive direction. Like I simply do support that. But like that's not like my thing. I'm not like
Yeah.
I'm not like we'll just riot and riot and riot until
Yeah.
like the bad thing is killed, right? Like
Yeah.
it's abolition, right? Like and the linguistic problem with abolition is everyone is always thinking that it just means get rid of the thing that is and like have nothing. And it's all or abolition always is get rid of the thing and replace it with the other thing.
Yeah.
So like for example, gender abolition, right?
Yeah.
Gender abolition does not mean everyone becomes like like bald gray-skinned person in a like perfect gray uniform, just like walking in lockstep everywhere,
Unless we want to.
taking your anti-emotion pills, unless that is your gender. Like
Yeah.
it's gender abolition is like unpinning gender expression as it currently exists from like social roles that reward masculinity and dominating behavior,
Mm.
and instead having a system where people express things about how they'd like to be treated through their gender expression, perhaps,
Yeah.
but also like just what they feel about themselves without there being advantages for some genders. That's gender abolition. It will take some thinking about what gender means to different people and what we'd all like it to mean to get there, but it doesn't
Yeah.
mean no gender, right?
Well,
Always
yeah.
be suspicious of anyone who simply calls themselves either an abolitionist or a Marxist, because they
What?
tend to be some of the most. No, no,
I
no.
know
Honestly,
loads of
I'm telling
people
you
call
now.
themselves
Always be
abolitionists,
suspicious,
but
because I'm telling you now, some of those people are the biggest cops in the entire movement.
so
No,
there are
I'm
some people
joking.
who
I'm
call
joking.
themselves. There are definitely
Yeah.
some people who it's the Marx thing, right? Sie wissen das nicht, aber sie tun es. A whole bunch of people do not see when they're acting exactly opposite to the values that they say.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, yeah. So, but
This
to
is a
tie
joke,
that
by
in,
the
I
way,
feel
for
like,
anyone who couldn't read that. Sorry, that's
well,
just so
speaking
everyone.
I
of
apologize for my autism.
speaking
It's
of
okay.
Marxism, Lenin said that, yeah, no Marxist can forget that violence will be an inevitable accompaniment of the collapse of capitalism on its full scale. So I feel like that is kind of the thing where it's like, okay, violence, I think, will be an inevitable accompaniment, but we've
Yes.
already talked about our definition of like what violence is. Violence doesn't. So when this person asked this question, they said bloodshed, which bloodshed is very different to like the concept of violence.
Yes,
Yes.
it's a specific kind of violence, but I also
Yeah.
think if you were going to divide up violence, like there are different ways to do it, and one is like systemic, like violence is happening to people because of some kind of system. One is like or systemic as in like people are being denied things that they need by a system or whatever, these kind of abstracted violences that you get, but also like there are violences that happen because of the kind of person someone is or the kind of person someone doing the violence is. But then there's also just like there are people like get road rage and beat the fuck out of each other, and this is like an interpersonal violence that it like is because it's interpersonal conflict like needs to be addressed and handled in a different way to like systemic violences. And yeah, the system of capitalism is violent every day. There will be some more violence in it coming apart because it will try to hold on as hard as it can, as you're seeing it happen, and there will be some violence to overcome that violence that it's doing. Like there is a reality of like two sides in a conflict needing to enact violence on each other to try to like come out alive or maintaining your autonomy, not necessarily alive, but just like free, right?
Yeah. So I feel like that leads into you mentioned Kwame Ture before. I always say Kwame Ture because Ture is like
I'm not
that's how
sure
you
which it
pronounce it in
is.
Maori. No, you're right.
Okay.
But I just pronounce it, and especially because like the E on the end of Kwame and then Ture. But yeah, Ture is how you would say it
That
in
makes
Maori,
sense.
and it's like it's the same. But anyway, like the idea of mobilizing versus organizing, which I feel like I even maybe spoke about this on a stream a couple weeks ago or whatever. But so we have like a revolution, which is like something that is like organized, planned, structured, clear groups that are like kind of like setting plans and expect all these kind of things like that, like with a goal in mind that has like a plan to get there. And like, and this can include everything like strikes, like obviously building dual power, which is something that we've talked about a lot, and like occasionally armed struggle. And it's something that is like planned for the long term, like years and all this kind of stuff. And I mean, it's like with the goal of creating or establishing a new political sort of or economic system or whatever like that. Whereas like a riot is generally just like so as opposed to organizing, this is like mobilizing. And it doesn't mean that like a riot can't be part of like a revolution, or like often when you get to the point when the contradictions are heightening and you get to the point where there is like potential for a revolution, you will see a lot more riots and things like that because there are these like genuine grievances and things. So I think it's like the duty of left-wing orgs in this time to try and capture that revolutionary potential and funnel it through, because I think there's like very typically like this idea of like single like mobilizing just like alone for one specific cause leads to almost always to like being co-opted by something else, whether it's by like an NGO or like liberal politicians, etc., etc. And this is something that Kwame spoke a lot about with the difference between Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, where it's like Martin Luther King did a lot of amazing work, but he was a mobilizer. So he would get everyone out to protest a specific issue, and then and then they would get their civil rights and then move on to the next one or whatever. Whereas Malcolm X was, what Kwame said was everywhere he went, he left a mosque. He was building these networks behind him. So, you see the way that the civil rights movement went for like Black people in America, where through these protests, they were able to win the legal rights to participate more in capitalism, as opposed to, full, real, I guess, like economic liberation that would come from like a real revolution or like an actual, like proper American Reformation or anything like that. So I feel like Tua said, you can mobilize people for a demonstration, but you must organize them for revolution. Like that's the difference, So and that's why the Panthers weren't just like, instead of protesting police brutality, they were arming communities, and they were, like also working in those communities, obviously feeding kids, teaching things like Marxism and all this kind of things like that. So I feel like like these these riots are obviously good and like a real, like a powerful moment and stuff. But I feel like at the moment, like we see like, so these No Kings protests, like that is pretty much led by the liberal establishment creating an acceptable form of protest, as like, and we see that as like, the way I see it is that's the pressure valve for the legitimate protests,
Yeah,
well, I mean,
yeah.
not like the legitimate protest,
The
but
energy
yeah,
there
yeah,
is
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
for dissent. Yeah, exactly.
Funnily enough, one of the sort of biggest cheerleaders of the No Kings movement is actually Bernice King, who is Martin Luther King's youngest daughter.
No Kings.
Yeah.
One king.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think something happens a lot in discourse about political violence. Zizek's talked about this a bunch in his book, which I think, is it called Violence or On Violence? One of those two. Which is like to do with the way people talk about like libidinal urges in violence. People always start to talk about the subconscious and like feelings and like whatever. And it's like people for sure have a lot of feelings when they like go like smash in a bus stop or whatever. Like for sure they are letting out like a big energy. But this always, I think, betrays like people are constantly getting it wrong about how much human beings think. Like they will either be looking at something and wanting to explain what the thought process was behind it and saying, oh, they were probably thinking this and this and this and this and this and this and this. And the reality is like that person was like confused and having a sleepy day or something. And just like just like whatever. Versus like when they see political violence so often, it goes straight to just like these people are essentially animals, like these people have become animals and are like having no like formulated thoughts. And the reality is, sorry, they are. Like it makes it more horrifying, like more upsetting, more cruel, more disgusting to think that like the people in Ballymena, the people in Southport, whatever, like were thinking complete cohesive thoughts when they were like setting fire to refugees like accommodation. Like that, it sucks to think that, but it is true. Are they like what you'd call sane or healthy thoughts? No, that's why they're trying to burn like refugees to death, right? Like it's a
like no one is going to do that hasn't been already thinking about all the kinds of things they could do to refugees and all that kind of shit, right?
exactly. But it's just this constant mistake to think that like the mob, I don't mean the mafia, I mean, just a crowd is just this like baying, seething, like nonsensical emotional mass. Whereas like when in reality, like there are countless examples throughout history of like crowds of people who've gotten suddenly stirred up to do something and have enacted like a goal with a high degree of like expertise and technical like and like care and caution and all sorts of stuff. There's a great thing I saw in a video by Tom Nicholas once, which was about like a mob who went and like raided grain stores or something, and then they brought the sacks back that they'd been like taking. They only took as much as like this person had been like hoarding off of them that they were owed and
Yeah.
stuff like this. And it's like this idea of mob mentality and all like political violence of the kind that rioting is like mob mentality that like people abandon all reason. This only serves the working class because it paints the rules. It only serves the ruling class because it paints the working class as this kind of mindless animal. And the truth is that people are thinking about stuff and have reasons for doing things most of the time. Like even someone who was like in like mentally in a different reality would have reasons for doing the things they're doing in the reality they're in. Like there are still thought processes happening, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and we see that a lot with a lot of these people that have been radicalized into like insane brain rot conspiracy shit or whatever like that, where it's like they functionally are operating in a different reality. They've created or they live in a simulation of reality that is like, just at odds with reality, but they're still thinking and they're still reasoning just with a different set of assumptions. It's like if someone explained to you how like how planes work in a totally wrong way, and then they asked you, okay, and so what are you going to do? How are you going to shoot that plane down or whatever?
I'm gonna go to the like Blorbinator. I'm gonna like disable it first. I'm gonna check if the shields are on. Like that's important, obviously.
Exactly.
Exactly. Like it's
So when you get like these freaks that think that there's like like a democratic satanic cabal under like Comet Pizza or some shit like that, like they're not acting like like they're not just like it's not a random outburst or whatever like that. They're actually really thinking about it. But I feel like we'll probably end up talking like, I mean, I think like the way things are going, we're probably going to end up talking about this kind of stuff, and particularly like political violence again, more and more as
it's going to continue to be a topic.
The American century grows to a close.
We're going to talk about it more and more, folks. There's going to be more and more political violence. The radical leftists, they're calling it political violence. What is this?
I don't even think I've heard this impression before. This is like new to me.
I've learned that actually a good way to do a Trump voice, because I used to do it like this, and it's like he doesn't talk like that. He has like a rasp in the back of his throat, and if you just add that, it'll sound like a bit more like him. I can never live up to Sophie's impression. This is just the reality of it.
Well, we'll see you all next week. So we're a show. We're supported by our Patreon. No, I'm serious. I want to wrap up. You should go to patreon.com/red_planet and support us there. If you want to hear my Trump impression, there is a bonus episode where I make Mule piss his pants. Actually, like for real, literally, it was really gross.
Yeah,
because we were in a caravan together, and it was dreadful. Where I did a bunch of it there, and people were enjoying it. But there's bonus episodes. We have a ton of those up now. We're going to be recording some more soon, especially like because current events just keep coming at us so fast. There's so much shit happening, and obviously the Zad documentary, when it is done, will be available on our Patreon. You can also get into our Discord through Patreon, but at the highest tier you can have a personal thank you on every episode, and that looks like this. Risk Inverse, thank you for being our sicko tier Patreon supporter.
Thank you.
But what about Mule? Where can we get more Mule?
You can get more Mule in way more places than previously imagined, because I have now started doing little compilation videos of highlights of my Twitch stream, because that is the way that Twitch streamers have started doing it. Some that I have enjoyed recently are Sean the Black, for example, and a couple of other Twitch streamers who are doing politics. Got some pretty cool little highlights. So I started to do one of my own. You can find that on YouTube. That's Mule Twitch Clip. Clips. If you search that, it should just come up. I've done one on Tom York's shit take on Palestine. I've done one on the Mad Lean, and I've done one on the quiz that's going around called Zionism versus Nazism, Who Said It? And you can also check that quiz out for yourself at zionism.wtf. Send it to your friends, family members who aren't sure about how bad Zionism is, and you will have them be surprised. So check out my new channel. I've also put another video on my main channel, which was really badly timed. It was about Trump and Musk's little feud and how it kind of exposes them as just like really shit, cowardly leaders who are just like really fragile baby men, and you know, how we can use that to our advantage in conversations with liberals, for example, and also you know, any kind of reactionary people you might come across. If they're willing to listen, they might not be. Who knows? Who knows, folks? You can get all of my links at linktree.ee/DJ Mule. I've unfortunately started posting on Twitter again. It's bad, it's back, but I'm on there. If you're still on there yourself, get on there and I don't know, enjoy the brain rot with me, I guess. Sift through the disinformation and yell at people for no reason. It's not fun and good. Don't do it. Stay outside, touch grass, and do activism. Yeah, so go on linktree.ee/DJ Mule. I've started streaming again. I'm probably going to be keeping up my schedule of Monday to Thursday. So check that out at twitch.tv/DJ MUEL. And of course, go to the Patreon for more information about my new video that's coming up, which is going to be kind of about everything that's going on right now and kind of similar to what we've been talking about on Red Planet today, and just sort of like, you know, what must be done, as it were. There's some more information about that on my Patreon now for paid members, so go ahead and give me some money, and that would be really good. Speaking of giving people money, you should give money to Sophie. You should also give money to Tim for sure, but you should definitely give money to Sophie and Red Planet. But Sophie, where can people give money to you, specifically you?
Specifically, I am specifically available at specifically patreon.com/Sophie from Mars. I just finished my video essay about the Mars trilogy. I will be making a small amendment to the Patreon version to add in another astrophotography section. As I said, I did my Saturn mission earlier this week, and so I've got a little bit more to add into it. This beautiful shot that I put together of Saturn. You very faintly see these little, like, the wings look like dragonfly wings because they're so delicate. But it's about, the video is about the Mars trilogy by Kim Stanley Robinson, which is a sci-fi epic over 200 years as like the first colonists on Mars like rebel, and then there's Martian communism, and then there's all sorts of communism all over the solar system, and it's very cool. And I have a lot to say about it because it's my favorite sci-fi series, probably my favorite fiction series. And I had to put a lot into the visuals because it's never been adapted to screen. So this is my highest effort video I've ever made, and also my prettiest video by far. Like, it's really fucking good to look at. You can go watch it, including these sections where I show like a bunch of astrophotography I've been doing and talk through it, including a bunch of visuals I created of the iconic stuff from the series in Kerbal Space Program and Surviving Mars video games. You can see all of that for just $2 right now, like literally right now at patreon.com/Sophie from Mars. Go watch it. Give me $2. Go watch it. If you like it, tell a friend to do the same thing. Rinse and repeat. That's it for now. And I will have more stuff like over the next few weeks, probably some topical stuff. But yeah, for now, go check out my Mars trilogy video. It's real good. Tim, where can people get more of you?
You can find me on Twitch and YouTube as Conquest of Dread, or you can find me on Blue Sky and Twitter as Dread Conquest. Also, if you are into tabletop RPGs and stuff, I've got one on the way called Dark RPG. You can find it on Twitter, Dark RPG 2000. Kind of like a dark dystopian future sort of thing. Very, I forgot how much it's not like one of those games that is like, we're gonna build a utopia together, like a lot of kind of like, you know, like lefty TTRPGs are about. It's kind of more like about just like surviving in this like fucked up capitalist hellscape. But it is full of it's full of leftist or like generally like communist like kind of like pull quotes that are like relevant to the stuff in the thing. But I forgot about it because I have been sending it to people for like playtesting and stuff. And someone the other day was like, holy shit, like there's a quote in here that I fully just had an epiphany about. And it's like totally just like, you know, it's a game book, but it does talk about, you know, everything from like you know, like the capitalist relationships of, you know, like the working class versus the corporates or whatever, to like, you know, like gaming under capitalism and what that means,
they're calling
like,
it
for the gamer.
They're calling it a great present to get for your liberal TTRPG enjoying friends for any birthdays, Christmases,
Yeah.
Mother's Days, Father's Days.
Yeah, so that's wrapping up soon. I am aiming on doing some kind of Kickstarter kind of thing, but yeah, just kind of late stage playtesting and stuff at the moment. So check that out. Yeah, Twitter Dark RPG 2000 if you want to take a look at that. Yeah, that's me. Where can we find more for? Oh, Mule, did you?
No, we're all
Yeah,
done.
no, sorry, I was like, no, you've already done it. Yeah.
So much time promoting my shit, but thank you, Tim. I appreciate that.
So yeah, but if you want to support us more, obviously check out our Patreon. There's the patreon.com/Reddit.
We already we've done
we're
Patreon as well. We're all good.
You cut this.
Tim's just so Tim, you're just so hyped about our
maybe you can go and
that's great.
Look up Mercenary Creative and buy some merchandise then. I bet you
that is actually what I forgot to do. Yeah, you should do that.
Yeah.
We have merch,
Don't
He
cut
got
that.
us. He got us.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, I was distracted for a second.
We'll all see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.